Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. For those of you who listened to the KPFT show that we had on air yesterday, I hope you enjoyed it. It was actually, we had some great callers to the show. I hope you didn't miss it, but in case you missed it, remember to go to politicsdoneright.com. Remember to go to politicsdoneright.com. And you can get to the program. What are we going to talk about today? We have a whole lot to talk about today, but before we get into that, kudos to, or not kudos, but really shame on what's happening to the Bahamas. The Bahamas is going through hell right now. So, folks, if you have the wherewithal to assist and help whatever you can with the Bahamas. I mean, when we talk about total devastation on the Bahama Island and on the Abacus Island, it is astounding. And I mean, I don't even know how to talk about it really, because I mean, it was simply, what's occurring on the island is simply bad. So if you can, please remember that we are all humans. We all need to support each other. Because, my God, what's happening in the Bahamas right now, and if for all of those of you who've heard what's going on in the place, please give those people a helping hand. They are going to need us now more than ever. So for the Bahamas, please help those folks. And now we are also probably going to get hit somewhat in, not as hard, of course, but we are going to get hit somewhat in the Carolinas. I think it's past in Georgia, but the folks that are going to feel the brunt is the Carolinas. So keep them keep abreast of what's going on out there. Give them a helping hand as well. We're going to get into the program right away, but beforehand, I just wanted to give those notions to folks. Remember, we're all humans. Let's help each other out. We're going to get to the program. We have a great program that we want to talk about today. So please stick around. Please go to politicsdoneright.com, become a subscriber. Please talk to people about Politics Done Right. Please, if you're just joining us, please go ahead and share the program. That is how we're going to make a difference. We have some important things to talk about today, and I want to get to that as soon as possible. So please hang out here with us. So what is the program about today? You know, they tell you when you're doing these online streams, because people are ready to come, they want to know what's going on right away. So here it goes. Incompetent GOP lets Walmart lead. That's the first topic. Second topic is an unelectable Trump a danger to progressive? Subtitle. Today we discuss an incompetent GOP, which is by design. Anybody who thinks that, oh my God, how incompetent of the GOP, and they don't know what they're doing, or they know exactly what they're doing. Don't dare you believe that they don't know what they're doing and this isn't by design, okay? They do. These are intelligent people. All those folks up there in Washington, the vast majority of them, they're intelligent. They know what's going on. And the second topic, will an unelectable Donald Trump present a new danger for the plutocracy for progressive? The willful incompetence of the GOP cedes we the people's power to the plutocracy. We have to empower progressives. It is very, very sad. It is very sad that because of the willful incompetence of the Republican Party, that the strength of corporations is further enhanced. Walmart is saying, since the government will not lead, we Walmart, an unelected part of our society will act. And, we have to thank them for acting. I mean, they could have just said, let's do nothing, but they're at least doing something. After all, they sell a whole lot of guns. 20% of the munitions are sold by Walmart. So I guess they figure they better act before something else starts to happen. After all, a lot of the shootings have been at Walmarts. Not only by crazies, but even by cops killing innocent people in Walmart. Anyhow, continuing. Bad government is what society gets when we elect a party who is anathema to governing. A party that does not believe in government. It is the reason why it is essential that progressives take complete control of the federal and state governments. Let's remember something. Republicans tell you that all the time. They want small government and government is a problem. All those kinds of things they like to say. That means they really don't like governing. And if you don't like governing, you can't do a good thing. 612, that's on hold right now. I'll be coming to you in a second, my dear friend. President Trump is now looking very vulnerable. As was said by a pundit on MSNBC recently, many Democrats believe that they could put an edible fruit basket against the president and still win. But does an unelectable Trump create a problem for progressives and their candidates? If it is, or it is something we should explore with fall progressives like Michael Bennett and John Delaney staying in the race, we must be careful. They know they can't win, but they may be used to corrupt truth and the progressive narrative. I have another topic that I want to talk about. Before I get there, let me get to the phone, and then I'll come back to talking about these issues. And folks, if you are listening wherever you are, whether it's by Blog Talk Radio, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook Live, please give us a call, 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. Join the conversation. I am going to, before I get to the call, pull up the chat so that I can have the combined chat. I should have done that before so that I can pull in YouTube and all the rest all at the same time. Okay, folks, if you're sending messages, you can talk away either on YouTube Live, Periscope Live, Facebook Live, anything. Okay, let's go to 612. 612, come on in. 612, you're on.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Come on, go on in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I noticed how on your description page you talked about how, Republicans or basically people who don't believe in government or their views are anathema to the idea of having a government. And I just want to point out, that's kind of what our Constitution was based on. I mean, our Constitution was based on the idea of limited government. And why was that? Because people coming from Europe came from oppressive governments. So the founders decided we need to put together a system that has checks and balances and is also designed to limit the power and scope of the federal government, which was genius on their part. And that's what led to us having a great nation we have now. But to your point about progressives, this is something I want to point out.
Let me stop you there because what you said was beautiful. I want to stop you there, though. What you said was beautiful. I wish it were true that was the real intent of the founders. While I respond, I'm going to put you on hold a minute just so I don't hear the background noise, and then I'm going to bring you back in. Okay? Are you there? Hello.
No, I muted myself.
Oh, okay,
I can mute
great.
myself.
Mute yourself then. I won't have to do it then. Go ahead and mute yourself. Let me respond. And then I'll ask you to come back in. But I really thank you for bringing that out because that is a theory, right? Limited government, these people came from a place. That is a narrative that the right likes to spin. They came from monarchies where the monarchies were the government and they could do as they please. They own all the land. But what we have to realize is that the founders of this country did the same thing. They gave the semblance of wanting a spread out government, a limited government, but when they decided to create a government, they created a government where only 5% of the people had any power in the government, only 5% of the people could vote then. They created a government where they made a compromise that black people were 3/5 of a person. They created a government where women couldn't vote. So, I mean, what I want to dispel is to say, or what I want to say first of all is that the essence of the Constitution was, in a lot of ways, checks and balances seem like it should work fine. And, the concept sounds very well, but the implementation hadn't been that way at all. We never used to elect senators popularly because we didn't trust the people. We still don't elect the president by a popular vote, we do it through an electoral college, which means we can at any time overturn the will of the people. There are a lot of what we are seeing with Trump. What we're seeing with Trump is that what we thought was a great constitution was really not. What it turned out to be is we had great people. You, sir, are a great person. You are a person who wants to do good for the country. And most people in our society want to do good by the country. Unfortunately, many of the people who were the creators of this country didn't share the same belief. Go ahead, sir. Thank you. Your turn, sir. You can come in now. I can't hear you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. No, it's a fair point on your part, but you have to also remember, when it comes to the Electoral College and when we have with senators, you have to separate that from the idea of them trying to supposedly suppress the vote of the people. Now, that may be true to a certain degree, but it also had to do with the fact that there were certain states that would not join or form a union when they had the colonies because they felt like they wouldn't be represented.
Exactly.
Some of the smaller states with lots of population. So
Understood.
The Electoral College is designed to protect rural voters in smaller states so that if we had just a purely open general election, what we would have is essentially New York and Los Angeles would dictate the way the country would go always. And people in Middle America would be essentially irrelevant. So we have to protect our interests. And more than that, the founders made a really strong point against just a open democracy. They wrote against that. And I agree with them because a democracy in that sense can become a mob where a group of people just literally group up and then just take advantage of everybody else like that.
Sir, if I may
and putting policies in place.
You're so right to some extent, but let me interrupt and say one thing. Yes, we're live today. May Wood, we're live today. Masticator, we're live. Let me just say, and by the way, we are always live. What happens is when I'm at KPFT 90.1 FM, there are so many other things. I have an engineer that takes care of all the sound, and that's the reason why I don't have the control. Somebody else has the controls. When I do it on other days, I have the full control. Okay, coming back to you, sir. What is your name, sir?
Michael.
Okay, Michael. Let me just say one thing. I can understand to some extent small states in the long ago times thinking that there was a problem with representation. In today, with the internet, with broadcast news, with mobility, where people move all around the country, I don't think that applies anymore. And what I think is when you have a Hillary Clinton who won by 3 million plus votes or whatever, you may not like her as a conservative. That's fine. I didn't particularly like Bush as a conservative, although I liked him a lot better than I did our current president Trump. And caller who dropped off, I'll come to you. Come back in. Don't leave. Come on back in. I'll get to you. Even though I didn't like him, I respected that he won. The second time he ran, he won the popular vote. I think it is anti-democratic. We have a Bill of Rights to protect against mob rule. And if there are other things that we need to add to the Bill of Rights to protect the minorities, we should. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I mean, when it comes to the popular vote thing, that's kind of like when two kids are playing a game, and then the kid that loses complains and then tries to change the rules after the fact.
Okay.
And the reason that applies is when it comes to the popular vote, first of all, no one knows what the actual popular vote numbers would be. The reason I say that is a lot of people, depending on what state they live in, either don't turn out or do turn out. For example, I have friends that live in California who are conservative. They don't bother to vote in the general election because they know California is going to go blue. And the same can be said for Democrats who live in dark red states.
Right.
And so the idea that we can then, after this, when we have this current rules in, and then say after the fact, oh, the popular vote, that's ridiculous. And to that point, the reason she got that lead, it came down to California. Because if you watch election night, before we got to the California votes, Trump had a 1 million vote lead amongst the rest of the country. When we got to California, that's when the numbers flipped, and that's where she got the lead because they ran up the numbers in California.
Okay, sir, it's more than California. She didn't win California by 2 million votes.
No, it was the West Coast in general. It was California. You could throw in Oregon and Washington as well. But if you looked at election night, you can go. I mean, most of the news coverages still have their full coverage of election night. Go back and look where we were at as of, say, 1:30 a.m. election night, once we had gone basically the
Sir.
eastern and Midwest of the country were fully in.
But sir,
Trump had a
all of that may be
1.5
right.
million lead.
Let's say I posit that everything that you've just said is correct. The fact of the matter is we have a president of the United States who is governing with less than that, governing where most people didn't want him there. That's a fact. That is a numerical fact. There and you know saying that maybe.
Well, again, that's not how our country's ever determined a president. We've
I
always
agree.
determined president
I
by
agree with
electoral
you.
college.
And that's why we didn't. That's why
Right.
we didn't overthrow him, because you're correct. That's the way the country works. Now that's
Exactly. And Democrats have a built-in advantage with the electoral college because you guys get the three biggest states right off the top. You get New York, California, Illinois, every single election.
But-
So you have a built-in advantage.
No,
The
no.
only reason Trump won was because Trump was able to win states in the upper Midwest that Democrats traditionally win, like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin.
You know-
he managed to get Iowa and
Michael,
Ohio.
You can.
That's what it comes down
Michael,
to.
you are right. You are right in what you just said. Okay, what I'm trying to get across to you is, it doesn't matter any of that, because again, we have a president that did not get the majority of the people saying we want you. That's a simple fact. And you know, we can categorize it. If it were a Democrat that won that way, I would have said the same thing. Okay, I would have said the same.
No,
thing.
no, you wouldn't, and no one would say that. This is what Democrats have been saying for years, because Democrats know that they got the urban centers, and especially the coast. They got the Northeast and the West Coast, which happen to be the most heavily populated areas of our country, and they know they're going to run the numbers up, which is why I told you, if we had an open general election the way you're advocating for, as I said before, the West Coast and the Northeast would determine the political direction of this
And
country
what's wrong with
forever.
that? What is wrong with that?
It's wrong because the people in Middle America, this election proved 2016. Why did those states in the Upper Midwest vote for Trump when they had voted overwhelmingly for Obama twice and had been voting Democrats since the mid '80s? Why did they flip for Trump?
Sir,
because Trump was advocating for protectionist trade policies, something that mattered to the Midwest, and the people on the East Coast and West Coast were not affected by these trade deals to the same extent. That's why the Electoral College beautifully showed how it can preserve the interests of certain regions over other regions that don't deal with the same issues.
And
that's
actually,
what proved that it was
again, sir,
successful.
here's the problem with what you're saying. Okay, all of that would apply if it weren't a mobile country. But I'm going to have to let you go to get to the other call. But let me just say, I thank you for calling in and putting your point of view out there, because everybody's point of view is important on politics done right. I want to close by just telling you one thing, okay? The way our country is set up right now, both with with senators and so forth, we have, it turns out, a Republican vote has more value than a Democratic vote on a per person basis. That's just a numerical fact. And I think you've got to agree with that. Now, the question is whether that is fair or not. I don't think it is fair. In your thought process, you think it is fair. I thank you so kindly for calling, sir.
Before you let me go, if I could just make one last point.
Sure,
This is actually the thing I wanted to say in the beginning.
Yes.
And this is what separates, I think, progressives like yourselves and conservatives like myself. And this is the analogy I give. You know what? When a young person gets about 18 to 21, and they're at that point where they can move out of their parents' house,
Yes.
they have two options.
Yes.
Okay? And this perfectly encapsulates why we have such a difference of opinion.
Yes.
One option is to stay at home and live with mom. And this is who the progressives are. You essentially get to stay home, and what are the benefits? You get food, you get clothes, you get shelter, you get a lot of things given to you because your parents are paying for it. But on the negative, you don't have the freedom and liberty you would have if you lived on your own. You have to live under their rules. You have to come home when they say so. You can only have over who they say. You can only, the noise has to be at a certain level. Essentially, you're under their rule. They get to tell you what you can and cannot do. Now, what's the flip side? Moving out and living on your own. Now, true, it's harder because you have to pay for your own things, like pay for your own food, pay for your own housing, pay for your own clothing and all that, but you get true freedom and liberty. You get to do what you want to do, go where you want to go, have over your house whenever you have, and that's exactly the difference between progressives and conservatives.
Okay.
Progressives want their life to be subsidized, and they're willing to surrender their freedom and liberty as long as they're taken care of. Conservatives want to be free and independent, and we're willing to pay the cost, the hard work, to be able to take care of ourselves as long as we're truly free.
Now that
And the
sounds,
progressives don't want to be honest.
Let me
You don't
tell
want to,
you.
this is the part where you don't want to be honest.
Michael,
You're not telling the American people there's strings attached to all these government programs.
I gave you a long latitude to
Yeah.
say that. I gave you all the time
thank
you
you,
needed
sir. I
to say
appreciate
that.
it.
Did I give you a lot of time to say that?
Yes, sir. I appreciate that, and thank you for your patience.
Okay, now here's what my response to you is as follows. You're simply wrong. I'm as liberal as can be, and I left home at 18 and I made it, and all the liberals that I know think the same way. Let me tell you what we see as the difference between a liberal or a progressive and a conservative. We believe everyone should have equal access to success. Period. Nothing more. Equal access to success, not a handout, but we also believe that where there were injustices that caused disparities, they should be mitigated. A lot of conservatives just want you to let it go. No, I'm sorry. That is not the case, because even the wealthy conservatives, because the wealthy are never conservatives really. The wealthy simply takes from everybody, conservatives and liberals alike. I need to go to other callers, Michael, but let me tell you, I enjoyed the conversation with you. I hope you continue to listen. I hope you continue to give your point of view, because I think over time, there's somewhere that we can meet. Okay, brother?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You have a good day, sir.
You have a wonderful day now. Okay, let's go to 973. Come on in, 973.
Berto, how are you today? It's
My
Johnny.
brother, I haven't heard from you in a long time. Talk to me. And then 781, I'll be coming to you afterwards. Come on in, sir.
You know, I enjoy when my conservative brothers and sisters come on the phone with you and simplify our complex environment here.
Yes.
And when I hear people talking about it's not fair that the more productive Northeast and California that produce more to the gross national product than anything in the center of the country, why should we be beholden to people who aren't as productive as we are?
You know something?
And what I'm saying is because we believe in fairness.
I wish I had thought about what you just said when I had Michael on, because that is a conservative concept that you just brought up there. That is a concept conservatives like to believe they believe in, but never execute on. And I am so sorry I didn't think about that to point that out to Michael. So I imagine if Michael is still listening, he would have heard what you just said. But continue, please, Johnny.
Well, and not only are we more productive, but the idea of America is about creating the meritocracy. And what he's reducing our experience to is a simple ledger. A ledger where this is what's owed and this is what things cost. But he doesn't talk about or even examine the wealth extraction and the fact that white males like himself have benefited from the theft of labor from, I'm just going to talk about ADOS.
Johnny, whenever
but I will also point to my immigrant brothers and sisters
Johnny, unless
that
you
have come
can see
here.
somebody's face, you don't know their race, you don't know their culture, so he's just
listen. It doesn't matter. No. Because we have black conservatives too. But the thing of the matter is, he was using coded language, and the coded language that he uses specifically comes from a certain conservative talk show agenda.
Right.
And that agenda is always seeking to produce a certain result, which is an oversimplification of the complexity of the economic structure of this country and how the wealth of this country was created and how they benefit from generation upon generation upon generation. And then they look at other people and they say, wait a second, it's not fair if you're asking to be put on equal footing with me. That's not fair. And what I find very interesting is this unwillingness to not only share the money, to share the wealth of this country, but just the democratic norms of representation. In other words, you made a great point talking about how is it right that a Republican in the Midwest, their vote is more valuable than a Democrat on the coast. That seems inherently unfair. But the thing of the matter is that the whole system is propped up on this creation of unfairness, this stealing wealth from women, stealing wealth from children, stealing wealth from minorities. And by And by taking that little bit of wealth, not a little bit, taking that wealth, you're able to tilt the whole system in such a way that we create this white supremacist construct that we're all being forced to live under. As opposed to, when are these guys going to say, hey, you know what? I actually think America would be better off if we were a meritocracy.
John,
and at the very best, we're given ladders so that we want the cream of the crop.
John, I want you to stay on, but let me go to another caller and keep you on, but I want to get to 781 and then come back to you because, again, you're a regular caller and like to get some other voices in. 781, come on in.
Hi, Egberto, it's Kathleen.
Hey, Kathleen, talk to me, my friend.
2 days in a row. Sorry, I had to call in.
I love to hear you call in, my friend.
Thank you. I have a couple of points to make about
Michael.
The caller before Johnny. I'm sorry, I forgot his name.
His name is Michael.
Michael, okay. First, his comments about progressives, young progressives.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically making a caricature that I believe started with the media.
Mm-hmm.
I know a number of millennials. I know a number of people in their mid-20s and up. And my friend Sarah, for instance, put herself through college, graduated $38,000 in debt, and steadily paid her loans. She's paid $20,000 to date, and she now owes $37,000.
All went to interest, right?
So, you know, I have to encourage Michael to actually take a look at the reality, what it's like for millennials that are in their 20s now that actually went to college, and what the average salary pays for somebody in their 20s, what the average one-bedroom apartment pays all across the country, the average rent, and tell me if you think they can afford to live on their own.
Kathleen, I'm glad that you brought that up because, when it comes to the higher education, right, what happens, and I've explained this in other shows before, what happens is college education continuously got more expensive because, again, there were all these breaks given to corporations who didn't want to pay taxes. So what happened then is corporations loan, meaning bankers, loan students money many times to go to school. I'm not talking about the ones who get GSLs and so forth, but loan money to these students to get an education, and these same shareholders in these same corporations then hire these students who paid for the needs of the corporation. If the corporations needed a certain level of education, the people paid for it. It used to be that the corporation paid taxes to the educational system who educated the people that the corporation needed. It was a perfect loop. But in their constant urge to constantly cut taxes, they shifted it all to the individual. As they shifted it all to the individual, we were becoming the subsidies to the corporations. And when you talk about higher rents, right, there's a thing that a speech I gave on price and power. Whoever has price and power can price such that you cannot ever get ahead. The price and power that they have is whatever amount of money you can give in such a manner that then you're left with nothing. And that's where their price and power ends. A lot of people don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michael may be calling back. So stay on the line with me, Kathleen. Let me get to Mike. I think this is Michael. Michael, is this you?
Well,
back?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, come on in, Michael.
I just wanted to clarify, because the first caller, I think he insinuated that I was white. I just want to let you know I'm an African immigrant. And to the second caller, the point I made, it was not about, I wasn't disparaging millennials. I'm a millennial myself. I was giving an analogy of comparing someone who lives at home versus someone who's independent and lives on their own. And I was trying to make a point that progressives are like the person who lives at home because they want to be subsidized, similar to the person who lives at home and their parents are subsidizing them, in contrast to the conservative who's essentially going to take care of themselves and have true freedom and
And you
liberty.
see, Michael, I think
That's
that's
the point I was trying to make.
what I wanted to add to that, Michael, is I think that's a figment of the conservative imagination. Because some of the most heavily subsidized people, some of the most heavily subsidized states are actually the conservative states, and I've written about that as well. The conservative states are net takers of money because it is shown that the conservative method of governing just doesn't work. Kansas, Brownback in Kansas tried, he had complete control of his establishment, meaning complete control of the legislature, complete control of the executive, and he tried to run the conservative haven. And what happened in his attempt to run the conservative haven is he ran Kansas into the ground, and Kansas has then turned into a democratic state with the governor and others coming into.
Right, and I could say the
But
same thing
Berto,
about
let me ask you a
California.
question. When did Michael come to this
I am
country?
directing traffic.
Hold on,
folks.
hold
I
on,
got
let me-
direct traffic here, folks.
let me-
We have
okay.
We have several people on the line, so that we can have an intelligent conversation. I'll direct traffic. Let me let Michael respond to that first, Johnny, and then I'll come to you. Respond, Johnny. Respond, Michael.
Yes, sir. And I was going to say, with your example of Kansas, that's fair, but I could flip and say the same thing to you about California and how Democrats have mismanaged it,
I
and
love
why
that
many
you brought in
businesses are
California.
moving to
Sir, okay, hold on,
Texas.
Michael, hold on.
Well,
hold on.
so Texas is an example
No.
of a positive conservative state that is
Wrong.
well run, and that's why businesses are leaving California,
And I'm glad
going
that-
to Texas. That's a fact, sir.
I am
It's not,
glad
it's
that
not my
you brought-
opinion.
Hold on a second, Michael. I'm glad that you brought up California, and I'm glad that you brought up Texas. California is after California became a super majority with Democrats who had total control of the budget. They did their economy, and now because it's not run by a pseudo Democratic Republican appeasement, now they have a balanced budget. And not only do they have a balanced budget, they have a surplus. They educate their people. Not only do they do that, but they also have health care for everybody. Let's make a difference now to Texas that you thought was a good conservative run state.
Oh, hold on. What about all the businesses that have left? You didn't acknowledge that, though.
Michael, I gave you full time.
Okay, well, acknowledge the other end, too. You
Respond,
can't just
Michael.
pretend that doesn't exist.
Michael, I will
Okay.
give you a chance to respond one at a time. Okay, now, when we talk about Texas now, Texas decided not to take the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, which they've already paid for, which is a fiduciary hit on being fiscally responsible. Texas is left with 1 million uninsured people, and in having 1 million uninsured people, what it means is that many more people are dying. Let me tell you something else about Texas, where I live. Texas also, their educational system has gone to the dogs. Take a look at the educational, not only in the urban areas, but in the rural areas where they have materially and continuously cut education. So Texas is not this well-run state that you think it is at all. And if you take a look at, there are rating agencies that rate states by education, rate states by economy, and Texas is nowhere on the top of any of those. Now you can respond, my dear friend.
Now we have to ask the question of the political bias of the agencies rating it, but I'm talking about from first-hand experience, having lived there and have family live there and doing business there. And it's a fact that you didn't want to acknowledge that there is a mass exodus of businesses out of California. That's a fact, sir. You didn't address that one at all.
You could look at the numbers for you right now. I will address it for you right now.
Okay.
I will address that for you.
Is it true, or did I just make that up? Is that a reality, or is that fiction?
There's flux, and there's absolute flux in companies, and there are companies who are their fiduciary responsibility is to their shareholders. They will look at California and they will look at Texas, and if they believe in Texas, if things are going to be a hell of a lot better for their fiduciary responsibility for their corporations, they'll do so. But the fact of the matter, if you look at the GDP, and not only the GDP, but the GDP per person in California, it is higher in Texas. So what we're saying is,
of course, because California had stopped before the Democrats took the supermajority in California. California had the equivalent of the 5th largest economy in the world. Now, since the Democrats have taken control, it's down to 7th, sir.
No, sir.
It's been on the decline ever since the Democrats have come to full power there. That's a fact.
Stop.
So that's not an opinion. That's a measurable fact.
Sir,
Okay, how can disprove it? Show me your data to disprove
Well, what
that
I will do, sir, is
California's economy went from 5th to 7th.
Sir, what I'll have to do, sir.
Go ahead.
Michael, what I'll have to do, since this is real time, I'll have to get that info. I've got to go to Johnny next, but let me just finish it up here, Michael. You have a lot of information that has been pushed by the right. It's simply wrong. And now that said, let me just tell you, hold on.
The same is true about you. You have information pushed by the left. Just because it's from the left or the right doesn't discount it.
Look, Michael,
the issue is the merit of the argument itself. That's how arguments are determined.
Michael, stop it. When I am speaking, you listen. When you speak, I listen. That's how we have good communications on politics and right. This isn't Hannity or one of these guys. Okay, continuing with what I'm saying. If you want to look at numbers, simply compare GDPs, simply compare levels of education, simply compare healthcare. Compare these things and then we can talk. Michael, give a closing statement so I can go to Johnny.
No, I can just answer Johnny's question because Johnny was asking me when did I come to America. I came to America in 1989 when I was young. But I've spent a lot of time overseas, both in Europe and in Africa since then. And so when I talk about America, I look at America comparing it to other nations, including the socialist European countries that leftists love so fondly.
Continue.
And I would never exchange it with any other one.
Thank you so kindly,
so
Michael. Michael, thank you for calling in, and you keep listening, you keep calling. And let me just say one thing. I'm going to have the last statement with you, and that is, there is a thing with that conservatives put out sometimes, and it's generally speaking, and I don't want to sound harsh, but somewhat of a lack of empathy and on trying to understand other points of view. I try like hell to understand all points of view. I really do, and that's the reason I give you the latitude on this show to say whatever you want.
But I understand your point of view. I used to be a progressive. I've talked to you before. Okay. Just like how you used to be a conservative. I used to be more to the left than even you were.
And
I was almost basically a communist.
Thank you
exactly. So I know your perspective. So don't accuse me of not being able to empathize with your viewpoint when I shared your viewpoint.
Okay. Interestingly, it seems like my viewpoint has been more successful. But no matter, my friend, we'll talk later. Okay. You keep listening. You keep calling, brother.
Yes, sir. Take care.
Have a good day. All right, Johnny, you can come back in.
My issue is the same with anyone that comes here from another country. When you come to America, you inherit the debt. And that debt is economic, it's blood, it's also historical. The world doesn't start in 1989 when you get off the boat and come to this country. America began in earnest in 1619 when the first black people were brought here in bondage to build this country. And that debt needs to be repaid, but first it needs to be acknowledged.
Now I don't
think it's fair.
May I interrupt you, Johnny? Because I'm an immigrant from Panama. And Kathleen, I'm going to bring you in a little bit. And the thing about it is I respect exactly what you're saying. And when I spoke to Michael about a certain lack of empathy, that's sort of what I mean, right? In other words, a lot of us have, even though we came from slavery as well. Any black person that came to the Americas first, he didn't because he came in from Africa straight up. So more than likely, he had some colonialism, but that's about, not the slavery type that was on the American continent. But that said, I think what it's important for us to note, right, and I think this is a very important concept, and that is, you are right. We came into a made country built on a lot of things on the natives, on black people, on Chinese people, and a lot of things that happen on this country, and we came to it in a lot of ways ready-made, and then could excel on it. And let me get Kathleen, and then I'm going to come back to you. Come on in, Kathleen.
Oh, goodness. I'm kind of at a loss. I don't really even know where to start. I guess I wanted to ask Michael if he believes that every elected official, with the exception of president, is elected democratically. And if every piece of legislation passed in Congress is passed democratically.
Wow, that's a good point, Kathleen.
I find it interesting that conservatives, we're a constitutional republic. Fine, yes, we are. Okay, there's no argument there. But we have a democratic government, with the exception of president. The president is from your town selectman to your mayor to your governor, all the way up. Every other elected official is elected by majority. That's the way it is. That's a democracy. That's the will of the people, the will of the majority. So,
I want to correct one thing, though. I want to correct one thing, though, with respect to the Congress, right? Because the Congress, it turns out, is very well representative of the volume of people who vote. Generally speaking, Republicans have an advantage through gerrymandering that a minority of people in the Congress represent the majority. So just thought I might throw that in.
Well, yes, and that's a very good point. I guess I should say ideally. We have a democratic form of government, and that's the way they govern.
Right.
So I don't, but I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, let me go back to Johnny then. Johnny, did you want to did you want to add to it?
Yes, I like to say that the problem that we're having here is when Reagan gets into office and he really pushes the corporate state, and when he starts allowing corporations to have the same rights as human beings, as citizens, that's when the country really took a turn down the road we have yet to recover from, and this includes up to Citizens United.
Right.
Because the problem in America now is that we don't represent the will of the people, you're representing the will of corporations.
Yeah.
And so my problem that we're having in America now is that what you're seeing is not the will of the people, but you're seeing the will of the corporate state. And until we address that issue, we're going to continue to undermine what we're supposed to be, which is a beacon of light, where democracies and self-rule, this experiment in self-rule, is really what we're supposed to be. That's what we're supposed to be admitting to the world. But instead, what we're seeing is how money has corrupted the entire process. And what started with corporations has now been extended into foreign countries like Russia being able to buy influence in this country, just like corporations do, in such a way so that they've taken the power from the people. And now we are subject to a corporate empire rule.
You know what
that's being reinforced by
What is interesting is the following, right? Everything that you're saying there is true, and the thing about it is many people on the conservative side, the Powell Manifesto. I talk about the Powell Manifesto ad nauseum. It was very good because it's psychological and it makes some arguments, and I hear those arguments. When you hear a Michael say, "I was a progressive," and then I hear him make the same arguments that's made within the Powell Manifesto on how they psychologically designed the Powell Manifesto to create a Michael. It is a hard job to change, because when something has plausibility and then it looks real, you can put something that seems real against the plausible. It's difficult. Did you want to say something? Who's that? Okay, let me go ahead and put Kathleen on hold a second. But I have another call. 612, come on in. 612, you're on.
Yeah, I'm back on. Kathleen and posed a question to
Michael
me about
again.
democracy on the state level. Because she posed a question to make. Okay, so I do understand that on the state level we have democratically elected officials, which is the case. But to the point that I mentioned to you was, when we had the country formed initially, when the union was being made, the smaller states would not sign on unless we had a form of a federal election or a federal government that would protect the smaller states' interests. Otherwise, they were not going to agree to join and make a union. That was the whole point. But it seems like you guys seem to forget that, and that's why we're a republic. We're not a democracy.
I don't forget that at all. What I wouldn't have done.
Okay, I don't think you forgot that. I'm talking to Kathleen. I don't know if she's even aware of that.
Kathleen, you want to respond to that?
Michael, first of all, please don't insult my intelligence. I'm very aware that we're a constitutional
republic. My intelligence asking me what a democracy was.
Michael,
so I'm asking you the same question likewise.
Michael, Again, I direct traffic here. Right now, Kathleen has the floor. When you have the floor, I'll tell you. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Okay.
I never made any remark about us not being a constitutional republic, and I understand what the founders had in mind when they established the Electoral College. I understand that. This has nothing to do with that. This is because conservatives, Republicans, like to say we're not a democracy. No, we're not saying we are a democracy. We're saying we have a democratic Congress. We have democratic state houses. That's how we enact legislation, is through a democratic vote where the majority wins. That's my point. So I'm not saying we're a democracy. I'm saying our government is a democratic form of government where the majority is required to pass legislation or to elect officials, like Egberto said, in an ideal scenario where there isn't gerrymandering or voter suppression, et cetera, et cetera. That was my only point. So I do understand why the Electoral College is in place, but I also understand that presidents are elected not by the will of the majority, but by the Electoral College, which seems to actually strip wills away from people.
And not only that, Kathleen, if I may
rather than
interrupt you,
represent them.
I want to interrupt your reason because the Supreme Court, I think it was the Supreme Court or District Court, just ruled as well that the electors are not responsible to follow state law. The electors can, or what the state, the electors cannot be told how to vote. Okay? In other words, we have a
Yeah.
separation.
It's the game the Democrats have been playing with, like they have in the state of Washington, where the electors, regardless of what the state votes, they can go on by the quote-unquote general popular vote total instead. So let's say in a hypothetical, let's say if Trump won a state, but he lost the popular vote, they're saying that those electors can turn around and then go ahead and give their electoral votes to the winner of the popular vote. Which is, again, this is nothing more than Democrats who are upset because they lost an election, so now they want to rewrite the rules
let me tell you something, Michael, let me tell you something, okay?
This is unreal.
Michael, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something, and I mean this from the depths of my heart. I don't think anybody on this line right now, that's meaning Kathleen, Johnny, or myself, or just die-hard Democrats that Democrats can do no wrong, in the same respect that you are with what you think conservatives are. We all understand something called an establishment. We all understand that there's a left rail and a right rail, and that the Democrats and the Republicans that fall within those rails, not without those rails, but within those rails, are all in one, the same, that are playing us all. One of the goals of my program has always been to bring smart Republicans and smart Democrats, meaning smart progressives and smart conservatives, together to realize that most of the things we have in common, actually, and that most of the things that are screwing you has nothing to do with progressive or conservative, but corporatocracy. And the thing about it is, we are so much like, if you hear yourself, if you listen to this tape afterwards, and you hear how you come across Democrat this and Democrat that, right? It is anathema to exactly how the system really is. But I mean, until more of us see that, we understand the enemy is not that conservative across the street, but the enemy is a corporatocracy that is sucking the living life out of us, including sucking the living life out of you, yet unrealized. We won't get anywhere. John, you want to comment on that?
Well, I actually agree with you on some of those points. We've agreed in the past about the ills of crony capitalism, and I'm with you on that.
Okay.
But when I'm talking about the Democrats, I'm not necessarily saying you, because I know you call out the Democrat establishment when they do things that are corrupt or that you disagree with, so I never accuse you of that. I'm talking about the movement to have this whole changing of the Electoral College. It's not out of the idea because they view it as an unfair system. It was done in response to them losing. That was their motivation.
That's not true. That's not true.
No, it's a fact. Come on now. We all know human behavior.
The fact is that the Electoral College...
Stop. Go ahead, Johnny.
The Electoral College was built. The concept of it was built to oppress enslaved black people. Because you have to account for their numbers. In Congress, this is factually correct. You can't, and what I love about what you're doing so consistently is you're ignoring the racial history of this country to your own detriment and to the detriment of your argument. You keep trying to construct these arguments, and you carefully avoid this issue of race. And this is why we need reparations. And by the way, first of all, I understand why you're doing what you're doing, because at the end of the day, you, sir, you just got here. And so these arguments are somewhat new to you. You haven't been dealing with these issues for very long at all. And in fact,
that's the way the world was.
Johnny still has the floor.
And in fact, I would just implore you, sir, to please educate yourself. Please take some time to read some books about subjects that you may not agree with, because you might find some information in there that will help streamline your thought processes. Because right now, I can only categorize your stuff as delusional.
Okay, Johnny, let him respond.
Okay, so to Johnny, I would say, I agree with that point about reading and learning different points of views, and that's why I used to think exactly the way you do. Up until the age of 22, I would have agreed with every point you brought forward wholeheartedly and would have been singing amen. We've been singing from the same hymn book. But once I got out of college and started to learn and study things for myself versus what I was being taught, that's when my views changed. You talk about reading and learning other views. I recommend the same to yourself. And if you really study history, you'll be fine. It's very different than the narrative that you've been sold that has been hammered into your head. And my point about when it comes to the issue of the Electoral College, the host even acknowledged it had to do with the fact that the smaller states had certain things they wanted in place.
No, it was only there to account for the slavery.
One at a time.
It's an artifact of slavery.
Okay, sir.
Michael has the floor. Michael.
Okay, I'm going to ask Johnny a simple question. Are you telling me that the Electoral College was put in place just for slavery or because of racism only? Or the states?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
yes,
then you're delusional.
Okay,
so you don't even know what you're talking about.
Let me respond to that.
Because even the host acknowledged, because me and him talked about it earlier.
Everybody stop, please. The bottom line is the Electoral College was created to keep the power in the hands of a few. Did it have racial motivations? Absolutely so. But it also had complete, we didn't think, or we didn't want the population in general to be the one picking our president, period.
But Berto,
it was a power.
Berto,
yes, sir.
even with the 3/5 rule, there were so many blacks in this country contributing free labor to this country. Even with the 3/5 rule, that was enough people to tilt the margins. So this is why they had to put the Electoral College in place, because these southern states had so many black people working there for free.
No,
and the system was set up in such a way that they had to put.
The rule had to do with the southern states trying to use slaves.
Listen, trust me on this.
I understand that, too, but I know what happened with that. Look, the states in the South that had black slaves, even though these people didn't even have freedom or any liberty or rights, they were still trying to apply them to their population counts to use for the election process. And that wasn't right, because these people aren't even free enough to vote or have any say in anything. How are the southern states going to turn around and then use them towards their population?
You're in agreement that it was wrong.
I'm talking.
It was wrong.
Yeah, because if they're not free people, then how can you then turn on and count them as if they have no say in the process at all? I gotta let both
of you go now.
Exactly. The Missouri Compromise. Okay, you nailed it. Very good.
No, but you know
that was the point.
Okay, hold 1 second.
I'm not agreeing with it. I'm just stating the fact of the matter. You're trying to make it. You're trying to spin into this. I understand where you're coming from. You're from that Howard Zinn.
I gotta close this.
People's History of America school of thinking.
Guys, when I say stop, please stop. Okay, please stop when I say stop. There's only one moderator here. Guys, look, I enjoyed the conversation. I got to let both of you go because
thank you, Berto. Have a good day.
Finish the show. Thank you so kindly, Johnny and Michael. Thank you for coming here. I just want to add one other thing to this, folks. Folks just have to learn to communicate a bit better. Anyhow, folks, man, I had some videos to show for the show and quite a few things to show for the show that I'm not going to be getting into because, well, the callers call in and we had a substantive discussion. So what I have to run to now is go down the line and see what people were saying online. Masticator says we don't have a democracy. Stop lying. If you don't know, educate yourself. Look, Masticator, stop being so with your words. I think everybody that listens to Politics Done Right actually are pretty darn smart. And I think they understand what we're saying. I don't believe the Constitution, even the conservative that just called in, copped to the Constitution being a fraud to some extent with respect to how it counted people. He admitted that himself. So therefore, if that part of it was a fraud, how many other pieces were frauds? We can go into that. There's no advantage for Democrats with the Electoral College is what Maywood is saying. No, you're absolutely correct. And the reason why also has to do with gerrymandering. I mean, take a look at how they pick the electorates for the Electoral College. Maywood said, in fact, every president elected while losing the popular vote has been Republican. True. Maywood talking about conflating facts and making assumptions. Yes, a lot of that occurs. Why am I not seeing comments on or posts on here? Is it me or is the chat room changed? May, let me tell you, a lot of people just listen, but what's going on right now is I can also see all the things that you're talking about right here in a combined chat room. But if you're not, I think you're under the main video. If you're under the main video, I can see them. Some people just don't respond. They just listen and they call in or whatever. Maywood, there's no mass exodus from California to Texas. A few companies, sure, but there's a lot of companies going in that other direction as well. I'm glad you said that, Maywood, because that is true. And notice what I spoke about fiduciary responsibility companies have and that they just execute that. May also says, could it be that company management doesn't like paying taxes? You hit it on the money, and that's what I meant by fiduciary responsibility. Once you have that the company is preeminent, that's what happens. I seem to have messed this up. No, you have not. I think you've done just fine. Folks, thank you so kindly for having been here. Thank you so kindly for being a part of Politics Done Right. Please remember to go to politicsdoneright.com, politicsdoneright.com. Become a subscriber. We talk about several issues. We go all over. Now today we had our callers call in and change the nature of the show, which is their right. I've always said that this show belongs to you, and if there's a topic that you want covered, then that is exactly what we are going to do. So again, please go ahead and consider subscribing. Go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. It's on the screen right now. Support independent media via Politics Done Right. Go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright and be a part of the family. We have our own group where we're trying to build that up now with all our supporters, where we're going to have special things going on in the future. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby, and it goes like this. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.